Welcome to this Doctors Without Borders, Médecins Sans Frontières, or MSF for short, information session. Thank you all for joining. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining from. So today we'll be discussing information related to working with MSF, recruitment criteria, profiles. We'll try to answer any questions that you have about working with us. And more importantly, I think most importantly, we'll bring some personal perspectives from one of our field workers. My name is Catherine. I'm a recruitment officer with MSF Canada, so based in Montreal. And with me, I have Isohe. So Isohe, do you want to give a brief introduction of yourself?
Oh, hi, everyone. Hello, and thanks for joining us. My name is Isohe. I just recently got back from a mission from Sierra Leone. I worked as a project finance manager, and I'll be answering any questions that you have about the field and the recruitment. So I'm happy to be here.
Great, welcome, Isohe. Thanks for doing this with us. So for everyone joining, please feel free to drop any questions you have into the chat. We will try to answer as many as possible today, but if we don't get to it live, we will send some answers into the chat directly. You can also email us at applications@msf.ca if you have any further questions later on. And we will also be putting some links to our website. So if you want to have a look, see the profiles that we recruit, get a little bit more information there too, you can find it there. So welcome everyone who's just joined. We'll get started. Maybe I'll give a very brief introduction of what we're looking for, the profiles, and then we'll get into the more specific questions. So we are MSF, we're a humanitarian organization. We work in over 70 countries currently. We have a lot of medical operations, but we don't recruit just medical profiles. So we recruit really a wide range of profiles. Of course, we do recruit doctors. We do recruit specialists, so anesthesiologists, obstetrician, gynecologists, surgeons, but we also recruit lots of paramedical profiles of nurses, infection control and prevention officers. We also recruit a lot of mental health profiles. In terms of the medical, we have a special need right now for pediatricians, as well as ER doctors. And we also have a lot of non-medicals profiles. So all of you non-medicals here, we do have a lot of need for HR professionals, finance professionals, anything in terms of advocacy, logistics. So all of your engineers, construction specialists, supply, water, sanitation, and more. So that's not all. You can find the full list of the profiles we look for on our website, as well as the specific criteria as well. I guess we can start maybe from personal perspectives. So maybe we'll start with Isohe, a little bit on your experience. So I guess my first general question would be, what was your first assignment, and what were you doing? So what was sort of the roles and responsibility for your first assignment?
So my first assignment was off in Sierra Leone in West Africa. I was there as the project finance manager. It was on a project that was the project is trying to reduce child and maternal health death. It's very big. It's been running for about 5 years now. We have two sites. We have a staff of over 250. National staff. So I was basically responsible for the overall financial management of the project. So budgets, cash, incentive payments, and all of that fun stuff. That's the basic idea.
Right. And what were you doing before MSF? So what was a little bit your experience before you joined?
So before MSF, I've always worked in international development. Now MSF is slightly different, where it's strictly humanitarian. So you could say I've always been in this sector, and again, I've always worked in the finance management side of things. Sort of had an idea of how it was going to be. Obviously, it's never the same, but I did that before MSF.
Right. And what motivated you? So I guess for most people, when you join MSF, it's not sort of a one-day decision. You're just working your regular job in Canada or wherever, and you decide, oh, I'm gonna go to MSF. Sort of what brought this reflection for you?
Okay, so true story. I was relocating to Canada from Nigeria. So I'm originally from Nigeria. So I was relocating to Canada, and I wanted to continue in the same sector as I always have worked. The humanitarian sector, international development sector, it's not very, it's not as big as it is in Africa or in Europe, right? So MSF was one of the first organizations that I saw. I was like, oh, bingo. So I applied. It took a couple months for them to get back to me. So I almost forgot I applied until I reached out. But I was happy applying. It was a field work. I specifically wanted field work because I wanted to go to the field to see what exactly happens there, have a first hand knowledge. When I was working in Nigeria, I was in capital city. I visited the field once in a while, but I didn't actually work from there. So I think that was one of my motivations. I wanted a first hand experience and to
Mhm.
actually see what's on ground, what's happening on ground.
Right. And you mentioned the recruitment process a little bit, so I'll get
Yeah,
maybe I'll share a little bit on that because I think it was one of the questions we got ahead of the info session. So I
yeah.
think a lot of people wonder what it's like when you apply to work with MSF. Sort of what does that look like? What's the length of the process? So I guess I can share the more HR background information, but I wanted to see sort of what was it like for you. So you said it took a while. It definitely wasn't. You didn't apply and then know where you were going within 3 weeks, right? It was more of a long
No,
process.
oh no, it was long. So I applied. I want to say I applied in January or in December of 2018 or January of 2019. I can't remember, but I was HR reached out to me in May of 2019. So that was the initial contact, just to get an overview of what my experience was and my motivation for applying. And then from May, I did not get confirmation that I was successful until I want to say October
Mhm.
or November.
Right.
Might have been before because I had to go for Welcome Day in October, I think. I think
Mhm.
Welcome Day was in
Mhm.
October. Yeah, so around October or end of September was
Right.
when I finally got,
So
confirmation.
it took a while,
It took
definitely.
a while. Yeah,
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 and I think that's something that's important for people to know as well is that when you apply to work with MSF, it does take a lot of reflection. It's a
yeah,
long process. You don't get to choose where you're going. You have to go through a series of interviews and tests. So it's quite a competitive process, but also one that requires quite a lot of flexibility. So you have to be sort of willing to take the time to consider that you're not applying right when you're available. Normally, you want to apply anywhere between 3 to 6 months to your time availability. And one of
yeah,
the reasons is that we're not recruiting for specific projects. We're recruiting for sort of a pool of professionals. So for Esohe, for example, she was in our pool of finance professionals. And then what we do on our side is sort of look for what are the needs coming up and where can we find a placement that works for you. So
mm.
maybe a question on your expectations, sort of did you sort of have any preferences to where you wanted to work when you first joined, when you first got the recruitment decision, I guess the call? Did you have any preferences? Were you kind of open? Were you expecting to go to Sierra Leone?
No, that's a big no. That wasn't even on my mind. I wanted to point out that even in September or October, when I found out that I was I was in the pool now, I still didn't know where I was going to go until mid January 2020. So I just wanted to put that out there. Um, okay, so no, I was open minded. I was ready to go anywhere. But I didn't have any expectations per se because you read online, you know these places, and the thing is that you already know that MSF goes to like the most vulnerable, volatile places, right? It's where there's like core and real need for patients. So that's where MSF goes. So you already know you're not going like on a vacation, right?
Mhm.
So I didn't have like any expectations per se. But I did get offers to loan in the middle of January. I was like, oh,
Mhm.
why not? I'm
Yeah.
from West Africa, so why not? Let's do
Yeah.
this.
And I guess the role that you were doing, it's part of it is management. So that was another point that I wanted to share with those of you who are joining. So every position that you do with MSF as an international field worker, there will be some part of it that's management. So it does require a significant amount of experience, at least 2 years of experience before you join. But maybe before we get to some of the questions in the chat, which I'm seeing, so thank you everyone for sending your questions. But just one question before then, wanted to see what the team was like. So you were a new person, sort of joining a team that was already sort of established. So what was it like getting there and getting to know your team? What steps did you take to sort of get to know your team and start having an impact in your project?
So I was very lucky. I had an amazing team. So the turnover for experts is quite high in MSF. So, everyone's going in and out all the time. It depends on the length of your mission and all of that. But when I arrived, my team was amazing. Everyone was amazing. I think, more than the work itself that I was able to, or my part that I was able to contribute to MSF and the project and the cause, the impact. Other than that, I think the second best thing or the next best thing are the people that I met. They're amazing. They're my friends now. In terms of the steps I took, I think it's important to understand that not everyone's you. So MSF is very diverse, like the most diverse. I don't know. I think this is the most diverse place that I've worked in. I've gone to school with a diverse group of people before, but in terms of work and career, and also living in the same space, I think this is the most diverse that it's ever been for me. So you have people from all over, literally all over the world, that have different perspectives in life, religion, sex. It's different. So I think what's important in order to survive in this field, in the field or in MSF, is to be open-minded. You have to be willing to accept anyone and everyone. There's no discrimination, sex, gender, religion, whatever it is. You can't do that. So yeah, and I think just the openness and eagerness to learn as well, because you don't know everything. You're going to learn so much. I probably have learned, like, I don't know, so many cultures now and norms, about other people and other religions and countries now, and I'm more aware of things. So it's a learning curve as well. So not just for the work itself, but also personally, because you meet these people, you interact with them, you live with them, right? So I don't think you have any choice other than to be accepting, basically.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's a very rich experience to have when you're there. And I think you had a really good point on sort of you don't know everything. I think that's a really good message to send to everyone. Just for info, most of the staff that we recruit are recruited locally. So you're not going to a new project. You're not going alone somewhere. You have a team that's there that know how MSF works better than you. They've been there for longer. They know the context. So it takes a lot of sort of having that humility and knowing what skills you can bring, but also knowing that you're going to learn a whole lot and maybe even more that you'll be able to share as well.
Yes.
Great. So I think we have a few questions. So I'm going to get to some of the questions from the chat. A couple of people were asking, what are the options for couples to leave together, a nurse-physician couple or a physician and partner who works within consulting business? So I have a bit of a bad news for you. It's very difficult, very, very difficult to leave as couples with MSF. So we're one of many partner sections we're recruiting. So there's very few positions just in general. So it's very, very difficult to find a project that would coincidentally need both you and sort of your partner's experience. So for the first assignment, and then probably most of the assignments that you will do with MSF, you will go alone. So that is something that you have to take into consideration as well, that you have to think that you'll be away from 6 to 12 months without your family. You will have vacation days, but you need to sort of have that reflection. But maybe for you, Esohe, you were gone for a while. You were gone for 12 months, which is sort of usually the longest for a first assignment. What was that like for you, being away from home, from family and friends for that long?
It was okay-ish at the beginning. So at the beginning, I had no problem. So the thing is that I've always been away from home since secondary school. So I went to boarding school, and then when I went off to uni, I went far away from my family. So I'm sort of, independent. So it was okay for me to meet new people, be in a new environment. That was okay. However, I think with COVID, so the thing with COVID is, I got there just literally at the brink of COVID, and things changed. Couldn't go on holiday. I couldn't take a break. Even socializing and going out to the local bars, you couldn't do that like freely. So it was quite strict. So I didn't go on a break until I think I was 8 months in. So that for me, it was a lot. Like
Right.
I just needed to be let out anywhere.
Yeah.
Luckily, the rules relaxed a bit. I wasn't able to come back to Canada, but I was able to go to Nigeria, which was just a few hours away. So I saw my parents and some of my friends. So that was okay. I think it just made me have a little reset. I had a little reset for 2 weeks, and then I got back to work and I was good to go. But 12 months went by really quickly. Like, I can't really remember how time flew. I guess, when you're busy with work and, doing all this good stuff, because it's always
Keeps you
work
busy.
to do. Yeah, there's always work to do. So yeah, time just goes by really quickly. But then if you don't take a break, it takes a toll on you mentally and physically. So that's very important.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a point for the 12 months that you said that it goes by really quickly. I think a lot of people do ask us why assignments are between 6 to 12 months, or they'll expect maybe I'll go for 2, 3 months, but it takes time, right? Just from your
Yes.
experience to sort of get to know your team, get to know the structure of the organization, the context, the specific medical needs, sort of that
Yeah.
doesn't happen overnight, right?
No, because it took me, I would say, about 3 to 4 months to fully settle into my role before I could start, trying to implement ideas or, see how we could improve the process. So you can't do that in your first week. You can't do that immediately. It doesn't work like that. Or maybe if you're in an emergency project, that's different. But in a regular ongoing project, it doesn't work like that. So you need time to settle in. So I think 6 months, 9 months, 12 months is a problem. 12 months is long. I'm not even going to lie, but it goes by really quickly. It does actually. So yeah.
Right. Thank you. So, well, for those of you who are just joining, just wanted to send a quick welcome. Thank you for joining us. So we're talking about the opportunities to work with MSF and answering any of your questions. So feel free to pop them into the chat. We'll get to some more of the questions right now. So we had a question that I think, Esohe, you've already partially answered, which was about how, from Anne, so how has COVID-19 affected your needs? So I think there's the answer of the actual medical operations, which of course it really depends by context. In some places we've had cases, and in others there's been less of an impact just on the medical operations themselves. But I would say that a big impact has been just mobility in general. As you probably noticed and mentioned, it's okay that you weren't able to take your vacation when you wanted to. You're not necessarily able to return to Canada when you wanted to. So that's been a big impact, definitely, of COVID-19, as well as some increased measures. And you had to quarantine, correct, when you got back?
Oh yeah. Oh, I had to do 4 COVID tests just to go on holiday and come back. So I had to do one before I left Sierra Leone. Nigeria expected me to do another one at arrival. When I was leaving Nigeria, I had to do one. And then when I got to Sierra Leone, I had to do another one. So yeah, that's 4 tests. And then that you also have to take into consideration quarantine period as well. So COVID has affected a lot of things, and it's affected the way the organization now is going about carrying continuing its activities, right? And we just have to adapt to the changes that comes with COVID. I don't think we have any choice. Some of the decisions that are being implemented are a bit difficult, but I guess to protect ourselves, to protect the patients, and also to be a what's it called, a responsible organization, we have to take these precautions quite seriously. I know, people have had to stay longer in the missions, just a few days or a few weeks because of COVID complicated issues. Maybe the flights got cancelled, or I don't know, a day before departure, the country of arrival changed, COVID requirements, or an expert coming into the mission got delayed because of the same issue. It's ongoing, or maybe your COVID test result doesn't come out early enough, or something funny. You just have to readapt. But the thing is, in Sierra Leone, because healthcare is our primary focus, that never stops at all. I worked in finance, so I was in the office. So the office staff, we had a few days where we had to work from home and not go into the office. But the medical staff continue to go to the hospital because patient care is important. That's like an essential work. So that didn't stop. But it did affect the way we went about our daily activities.
Yeah. Definitely. And I think some keywords there are adapting and flexibility, which I think we always tell anyone who wants to apply for MSF or who's thinking about it, you're going to have to be extremely flexible. You're going to have to sort of accept the instability of a lot of things, including when you're going to leave, where you're going to go, when you're going to come back, and all of those things. So it's definitely a very good point to keep in mind for those of you who are interested. So we have some more questions over here from Tiffany. How long in advance should I apply, and how long does the recruitment process take? So we've mentioned this a little bit, but definitely apply between 3 to 6 months before your planned availability. The process takes a while. The process, just the recruitment process, there's a lot of different steps. There's some phone screens, self-assessments, written tests, interview, and then once you're into the pool, we also have some trainings, which maybe that's a question that people have. What trainings are there for people who want to work with MSF? So, Desohe, do you remember your welcome days, your training days?
Yes, I had 2 trainings pre-departure. So you have a welcome day, which you're supposed to have in your country office. But now that it's COVID, I'm pretty sure it's virtual now.
Yes,
virtual. Okay, now it's virtual. So I know that they usually had 2, one in Toronto, one in Montreal. I went to the one in Montreal. It was for 3 days, I think. And then after that, you go to your PPD in Bonn. How does that work now? Virtual?
Yeah, it's all virtual. And just for the acronyms, your préparation pré-départ. So we have some French sort of names here and there from the MSF history, but yes, basically your pre-departure preparation. Yep.
Yes, lots of acronyms in MSF.
Lots of acronyms.
That was for roughly a week, 5 days, 6 days. That was in Bonn. So basically, what they both do almost similar things. It's just introduction to MSF, try to give you context about what to expect in the field. You have other MSF staff that have gone to the field before. That give you their personal experience, and then they train you on some skills as well that you should have pre-departure. And I think with these trainings, it's good to go attend, because there you sort to start to meet or mix with people from different backgrounds, right? Different age groups, different sex, different life experiences and work experiences. So it's amazing what you learn from people. It's really amazing. But
Definitely.
So 2 trainings pre-departure.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. So you keep bringing up sort of the diversity of experiences. I think that's the thing that's a bit specific to MSF or different, where in your job in Canada, you might be used to, if you're medical, you work really a lot with doctors and nurses. So you work with really specific fields. But MSF, you get to know, so you were a finance manager, but you probably worked very closely with the medical team, with the HR team, with logistics. So maybe if you can tell us a little bit what that was like, sort of working with all of these different profiles of different backgrounds, experiences.
Okay, so a typical work day would be I worked really closely with logistics, in fact, with all the departments. So with HR, for example, I work closely with them in terms of salary advance for the national staff or leave allowances for national staff. Also, incentive payments. We have incentive staff that we have to pay. So I work closely with them on that because they're in charge of, the payroll and staff list and what's it called, schedules. So
Mhm.
telling us who exactly to pay. Timesheets, yeah. Also, with the supply department, I work closely with them as well because they had purchases as well. They went to the market, they bought items for, it could be medical items, it could be construction items for the logistics team, it could be anything, it could even be stationaries for the offices. And I work closely with them in terms of advances, money to pay off suppliers or checks or invoices, just processing payments in general. With the logistics team, they also outsourced contractors. I had to work with them as well, making sure the contracts were okay according to MSF standards, the calculation of the fees are correct. When it was time to process the payments, making sure everything needed was there. All the medical department also, I had to work with them for incentive as well. Um, Also, we did what's it called? We usually give patients reimbursement, so it could be per diem or it could just be transport reimbursement. It depends on what it is. So with that, I had to work with them to know what the rate was, to know the duration of payments, to know when they needed money. So I had to work with everybody. I could, it's not like a one man island. You have to work with
Mhm.
everyone,
Yeah.
and you have no choice really. And again, that translates back to the house as well, like you mentioned. Everyone lives together, so you get to see everybody. Everyone talks about their day, and you just get to learn. One thing I did, because me, I just like to know stuff. So I used to sometimes ask to be in meetings with the technical team, so
Mhm.
medical team or the logistics team, just so I'm aware of what's happening. If I know what's happening, it's easier for me to manage my departments. I can then, plan processes or improve processes based on how activities are going in the project. So that was just
Mhm.
me. I just like to know.
Right. And I think that's a good thing to do. And you have more visibility and you see
Hmm.
the impact more, I'm assuming, if
Yeah.
you see the other elements of your work, you're not sort of in your own little silo, sort of doing your own thing.
Yeah.
Okay. I think you mentioned a good point we haven't discussed a little bit was the team life. So living with all of your international colleagues in one space, sort of less of a boundary between the professional and the personal. How was that for you? What were the highlights of that?
Amazing.
Amazing.
Amazing. So again, like I mentioned earlier, some people say maybe they don't have great experiences with house. I don't know, but this was my first mission. But my experience was amazing. Everyone was great. Everyone I've met now, I'm still in contact with them. There are people that I will meet up with in the future if COVID permits. They're my friends now. And we used to have movie nights either outside or inside, makeshift space, just project on the wall, use a bed sheet as our screen. We used to have games night as well. So as experts come and go, people bring in games and then leave them behind for the next group of experts to use. So that was really helpful. And then we just used to have random nights where we just sit and have conversations. People could talk about work or talk about just in general, their life in general, and you just get to know people on a more deeper level and connect with them. Right now, I already have 2 trips planned with different people to travel somewhere when COVID madness disappears. But I'm really grateful for the experience, the opportunity to have impact, for the opportunity to meet these people that I met. In fact, we even had a cooking group, so we used to cook and bake stuff, just random stuff off the internet. So it was interesting. We used to go for walks. Before the restrictions kicked in fully, we used to have collective sports, so volleyball or football, just to play, but then I couldn't do that anymore. But yeah, exercise
Mhm.
mornings and evenings.
Sounds great. I think everyone maybe wishes they would go to a project like that if they go with MSF. Great. No, thank you for your experiences. And I will get to some of the questions in the chat. I see that people are commenting. So thank you, everyone. Welcome to those who are just joining. Myself and Isohe, we're talking about working in the field with MSF. So we have a question about language skills, which I think is very relevant for anyone who's thinking of applying. So if you speak other languages other than English, it is highly valuable for MSF. We have a lot of projects, particularly in French-speaking contexts. So we're always looking for people to speak French. So if that's something that you're working on or developing those skills, taking classes, definitely have that into your skill set if that's something that's interesting to you. Of course, other languages as well, Arabic, Spanish, etc., but French in particular. And then we have another question from Lo. I hope I'm pronouncing that correct. Can you tell us more about MSF's intention in staff retention? Are you seeking staff for a couple assignments or long-term engagements? So definitely long-term engagement is very valuable for MSF. So definitely there is a lot of possibilities to have a career within MSF, to sort of start in a role and then sort of work your way up within the organization. So maybe I'll send that question to you as well, Zoe. What are your sort of objectives or ambitions to work with MSF for long term? Are you thinking of your next assignment already?
I told my career manager to give me a few months. I think 12 months. Only when I came back home, I realized how long 12 months was. So I was like, yeah, just give me a few months. And then I think about it. I know for sure I'll definitely go back out. Mm-hmm. When I'm not sure. To touch on the language skill, I don't speak any French. I'm only trying to learn now. Mm-hmm. Actually, I don't speak any other language that is relative to MSF. But I did go on a mission, right? And there are other English-speaking missions I can go for. A few other missions in non-speaking contexts, but I think it'd be easier if you spoke the language, local language. I think that would be easier for you. But you don't necessarily have to. It might be a bit tricky getting you into missions because of the language barrier. But I went on a mission for 12 months.
Yes, exactly. But and it's a good point as well, because we do look at profiles globally. So if anyone, we really do have needs for French speakers in general, but if you don't speak French, don't feel disappointed. We always look at your experience, whether it's at least 2 years of experience transferable to the role that you're applying for, but also your international experience. Have you worked abroad? Have you traveled a lot? Those are really useful and highly necessary skills to work with MSF. Management experience, have you trained, taught other staff? That is also really, really important. And I think you mentioned an important word. You said career manager, so maybe I'll explain that a little bit too.
Oh, sorry.
No, but I think it's really interesting.
No, it's good. Sorry.
So that highlights the fact that we are looking for people long term. When you're recruited to work with MSF, you get your very own career manager. So we have different career managers in the team who part of their role is really to sort of foster your career within MSF, support you in finding an assignment, have those discussions with your first assignment and then your subsequent assignments, and also guide you in your career. So you might start as a finance manager like Isohe, but you might want to be in coordination. You might eventually want to be a project coordinator, so sort of supervise a whole project, including the medical activities, the security management, etc. So the career manager is sort of there for that in particular, so to guide you in your career. Great, so we have a question. Is it possible to stay vegan when working overseas? That's a good question. Yes. I don't know if Isohe, you had any perspectives on that.
So I think I actually I don't want to say I'm vegan. I'm not vegan, but I started that journey when I was in the field. It used to be easier for me, actually. You could say it's because, I had limited options compared to what I'm used to. So maybe that was easier for me. But I did start. So I had a few vegan and vegetarian, colleagues. They were able to be fair, it could get hard sometimes, depending on where you go to. The options, the food options may be quite limited. compared to what you're used to. So I think that's something to have in mind. So what I usually advise people is, like, when I finally went on holiday to Nigeria, I made sure I bought a lot of things that I knew that I couldn't get in Sierra Leone. So I would advise that when you're going to your missions, be quite strategic with what you pack in your suitcase. Go with things that are important to you. Me, it's skincare and food. So, those are the key things that I packed. Just so you're not lacking, because the things that you think are basic that you should be able to find that you wouldn't find. So those sort of things I think you should go with, just in case.
Right.
Yeah.
Bring the things you can't live without, because you might not find that. Great.
Exactly.
And we do.
Then,
no, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, and then you don't even know. COVID is very volatile. You don't know when you're going to get a break or have anything sent to you. And having stuff sent to you is quite expensive. It's very. I did it once and I regret it. It's very expensive. So it's better you pack before you arrive. Yeah.
And even bringing some gifts for your colleagues, so that's
yes,
hugely valuable for the team there.
It's a rule. You have to.
You have no choice. Great. All right, so we'll get into some more questions that we're getting. Thanks everyone for sending your questions. Please feel free to drop some more into the chat. So do applicants always have to apply through the nearest MSF office? So I'll give a little bit of a brief overview for those of you who are joining from outside Canada. So essentially you should apply to the office that is related to your country of residence. If there is a specific MSF branch office or office in your country, you should apply to that one. So we'll put some links into the chat. If you're in Canada, we'll send you the link directly to the Canadian site. And if you're outside, there is a whole section on the MSF website, the international website, msf.org, that you can put sort of the country where you are and whether you want to work in the field or in the offices, and then it will direct you to the right link. So absolutely anyone can apply to work with MSF, no matter what country you're in. So definitely check that out and see if you can apply. If you're based in Canada, we have a whole working overseas section that has a ton of information, all the profiles we recruit, all the criteria, a little bit of information on the conditions in the field, security management, all of that. So feel free to check that out as well. And I think that's a good question that a lot of people have. So maybe we'll talk a bit about the security element. So I think that's something that's on a lot of people's mind, working in a context that might be in a conflict setting or post-conflict setting, or somewhere where there is some instability. We do respond to crises. We respond to people who are displaced by conflict. So there is security management is a huge part of working with MSF. So maybe hey, what was the security briefings like for you? What was the process for you to sort of reflect on your level of openness, and what was the situation where you were?
So in Sierra Leone, it's pretty, in MSF standard, it's considered pretty low level security risk compared to, say, Yemen or Afghanistan. I think the biggest security problem was road accidents and petty thefts. So those were the things that we had to be aware of. So it was pretty, I wouldn't say it was pretty chilled, but the thing is to note that even though it was low security level, the MSF has a general security rule that applies everywhere. So it was applied to us regardless. The whole, you can't go in any other car except the MSF car. You have to phone when you're leaving somewhere and when you arrive. Just sort of, small details and security information that you have to leave. So that's everywhere. But there was no curfew except when we had the COVID issues. Oh no, actually there is curfew, but it's not like you have to be back in the compound by 4 p.m. or 5 p.m. You have the curfew that you have to be back home until I think weekdays it was 11 and weekends 2 a.m. I can't remember now. Well, with COVID, you couldn't go anywhere, so you didn't need the coffee. But yeah, they're just tiny. I think that's something you have to be very aware of. MSF is very, very conscious of its security, of its staff. it doesn't take that lightly. So it's something that you have to get used to. I was there for 12 months, and sometimes I'm like, really, you really have to do this? But yeah, it's MSF. You have to. So yeah,
Right.
it's really scary.
It's definitely not something that we take lightly, security. And I think your project is almost one of the outliers where it's more stable, sort of less measures. For a lot of you, if you apply and you go to work with us overseas, you might be in a project with a ton of security measures, a lot of protocol. Some of the countries where we send a lot of Canadians include the Democratic Republic of Congo, South Sudan, Central African Republic, Afghanistan, Yemen, Iraq. So a lot of different contexts where you would have a lot of security measures. It's also a huge reflection to have. So something you should be thinking about even early on in your process. It's a conversation that goes on throughout the whole process, the recruitment, but also the placement. And while you don't get to choose where you'll be sent, you always get the final say. So you always get the choice to accept or not a placement, as well as a ton of information on the context, on the security measures in place, any security risks associated to the context. We work a lot on mitigating risks, but working with MSF is not 100% risk-free, as you can imagine. So it's a good reflection that you should have.
Yeah.
All right, so we're getting more questions, so thank you. Welcome to anyone who's joined recently. My name is Catherine, I'm a recruitment officer with MSF, and we have Esohe with us, who was a finance manager in Sierra Leone. So we have some more questions coming in. Sarah is asking about midwives. So yes, we do recruit midwives. I would send you directly to our website. Maybe we can post the link to the midwife profile. So it is a profile that we're looking for, and you can find that information online. All right, so I think maybe some questions more specific to your experience, Esohe. Do you have any sort of stories or highlights from your work? I know that's a big question, but and a long assignment for 12 months. But when you think of sort of the highlights of your experience, what are some of the stories or the moments that kind of stay in your head when you think about it?
Let's see. I think one of my biggest projects work-wise was to implement mobile money process as part of the financial process in the project. And to me, that in terms of work, that was my biggest highlights because I was able to do that before, just a few months before I left. So that was my baby project, and that was implemented. So now the project is less reliant on cash, and now we do the mobile money payment. So I'm very happy about that. Also, I think the staff I worked with, because I managed a staff of 2 on both sides, they're amazing. I think they had more impact on me than I had on them. So that was good as well. And I think I'll also continue to mention the people that I met. I worked with national staff and expats. But I think Christmas night was quite special. All of us were away from our friends and families. Some people were married and had kids, and they were away from them. So we just wanted to make it quite intimate. So it was team efforts to cook. Everyone made something that they would have made back home. And this was both, the religious people, non-Christians, and, everyone was involved. It was a team effort. And we had like a candlelight set up in the living area, and we all sat down and had a Christmas dinner. It was quite special. I don't think I'll forget that very soon. So that was one of my highlights. I don't know, I felt included, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Almost like having another family away from your family.
Yeah. And I also had a routine as well. Every Sunday, a group of us used to go on hikes. So we would just come out of the compound and just guess on which direction to go, and just go and then discover that part of town, and then come back. Sometimes it used to be like 2 hours hike or 3 hours walk, and then come back. So that was good. So yeah.
That's very nice. And I think that's another outlier as well, because for a lot of people who go on assignment, they might be working and living in a beautiful part of the world, but have so many security restrictions where you can't necessarily go for a long hike or go explore as much as you'd like to. And that can be a huge challenge as well. So, and speaking of challenges, what were some of the challenges that you faced? So it's not always all sunshine and rainbows working with MSF. So what were the difficult challenges that you had to face?
Food. Yeah, that was a concern for me. I've got, I think, although I went to Sierra Leone without any sort of expectations, but that was more towards, the living conditions and the work itself. But in terms of food, I don't know why, I had this idea in my head. Sierra Leone is in West Africa, so it's close to Nigeria. So they're going to have, similar food. I don't know why I thought that, but that was not the case. I have a dietary, restrictions. So there's certain things that I can't eat, right? And it was that was one of the concerns, and I couldn't have access to everything. And some of the things I had access to were quite expensive. So that's another thing. Sierra Leone is quite expensive because almost everything is imported. So if you ever do go to Sierra Leone, try and take the things that you like in terms of food with you. So food was one. What else did I don't think I had any other issues other than food, to be honest. Everything else was fine. Funny, I actually liked the simplicity. I wasn't in the capital, so I was out in the project. I liked the simplicity of life. There wasn't much there compared to what I'm used to. But just the simplicity was nice. Fresh air, you know, just sitting outside and just observing the locals. It was quite interesting. You could go on long trips sometimes, and that's something else. And sometimes the roads might not be very even, a lot of pavements, so that might not be so nice. So bumpy rides, I'm not a fan of that. So you could say that was like a minor challenge. And then in terms of work itself, I think a big challenge was reliance on cash. It was a lot because there's so many people that we had to pay with cash. So it was nice that towards the end of the mission, the mobile money process was implemented. So that helped. But other than that, you can see my challenges are quite insignificant. They're not serious.
Yeah. And I think it also shows that it really varies. There's hundreds of projects across the world where MSF works. So hundreds of experiences, thousands for each field worker might have a different experience and different challenges. It might be the mobility, sort of being restricted, not being able to go where you want. It might be the team. If you're not used to living with the people you're working with all the time, every day, 24 hours a day, that can be really difficult too. And questions on security as well. Just being in an environment where it's very new and there's security concerns or issues that can be difficult for people as well. So we have more questions coming in, so I'll answer a couple of them. So we have Deanna wondering what roles are most in demand for recruitment currently. So I'd say that we have a lot of profiles that we always have needs for, and that includes all of the what we call sort of general profiles, French speaking in particular, so anything HR, finance, logistics, sort of all of those profiles that are really supporting the operations on the non-medical side. We have a lot of needs for mental health professionals currently, so psychologists and psychiatrists particularly. We have a lot of mental health projects, but also mental health components in different projects. In terms of the medical needs, we need a lot of ER physicians as well as pediatricians in particular, but also anyone who has experience in sort of neonatal care, neonatal nurses in general. We have a ton of needs, particularly French speaking and people with experience sort of managing staff, sort of triage, charge and nurse experience. Those are all really relevant, and people who have experience internationally as well. That's a huge part of it. You need need to have traveled before. You need to have not necessarily worked abroad, which is ideal. But if you've traveled, if you've sort of gotten out of your comfort zone, sort of explored the world a little bit and had more multicultural experiences, exposure, and that will prepare you a lot better for MSF. And maybe a question more general for you, Asohi. So we talk about criteria, we talk about very technical experience, sort of 2 years of experience necessary for a specific role. So for you, it would have been 2 years in finance. But there's a lot of criteria that are kind of more soft skills, we could say, or life skills, sort of those types of competencies. So what, for you, would you consider to be those kind of criteria that make a good field worker? Like, what do you think helped you be a good field worker?
I was very flexible, and that helped me that made it easier for me to adapt to whatever changing conditions I found myself in. Also, like I mentioned earlier, because you're working with a very diverse set of groups, from the national staff to your colleagues, everyone's different from you. You have to be very considerate of other people's beliefs, perspectives, way of life. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to agree all the time. Agreeing or not agreeing does not mean you have to be disrespectful. So you have to respect that. Also, what else? I think that's it. You have to be open-minded. You can't go there expecting things to be the way that you want them to be, and if they're not, you just have to know how to adapt to what's in front of you. And I think it's important to know that with MSF, almost everything when it comes to you is a choice. So if at any point, you don't want to do something, you can say you want out, and you're not forced to do anything that you don't want to do. So just putting it out there. So I say these are the things that has helped me. I think it's just being a decent human in my perspective, and just be considerate of other people. Yeah.
Right. And I think I like that word of the decent human, because I think it relates to one of our core principles as well, which is humanity. So we're doing the work that we're doing really to support communities who we can help with the skills that we're bringing. So it really ultimately it all comes back to our patients and our local staff as well, who are part of the communities where we work and are also doing most of the work. They're 90% of our staff, and really they carry all of the projects. So really, and I think that's a good point as well. And maybe do you want to talk a little bit about the staff that you were working with most closely locally?
Oh yeah, so the two staff I worked with closely, they're so competent. Sometimes I was like, why am I here? So then I remember, I'm here to manage the whole financial process. But they're so competent. They know what they're doing. They're kind people. Oh, Sierra Leoneans are so nice. Oh my God, they're so nice, genuinely nice people, and they're so happy as well. Even during COVID, they're like, oh, let's go out. I'm like, no, I can't go. I work for MSF. I can't just stay out. So they're very nice. They're competent. They know what you're doing. Always happy to help out and in and out of work. And then also people that I worked with in other departments as well. They also know what it is that they're doing. So yeah, it was a good team, good group of people. Now I'm talking about it. I've only been back a month now. Just thinking about memories, and I miss them. They're actually good. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think on that note, I think for a lot of people, coming back is the whole process, right? So a lot of people think, what is it going to be like to go overseas, to sort of adapt to a new context? But returning home is also an adaptation, right? How was that process for you?
Because I was away for most of the COVID madness, I'm only just getting used to what's happening in Canada now. You have to join queues to go to the grocery store, or you have to book appointment in advance to places where you wouldn't have normally. So I'm sort of trying to reintegrate back into society. So yeah, it's coming on slowly, but it will take some time. But that's MSF life. So once I get used to this again, it might be time for me to go back out and then get used to it. Exactly. So, yeah.
Yeah. And did you find that you were sort of supported by MSF Canada? Because that's one thing that I wanted to talk about as well, the sort of support. We have psychosocial support, we have trainings, we have briefings and debriefings. So maybe if you can talk to, what was it like sort of, did you feel like you were sort of left to your own devices, or did you feel like the team sort of had your back in that sense?
No, like a month before, even before, earlier than that, I already had MSF office contacting me about my trip back home, the services that were available, from booking my flights to getting me a place to quarantine, and also telling me about the services that are available. I still have my medical insurance, active for the next 3 months, and all these other medical services available to me if I wanted any of that. So it's good. I've debriefed to few people. So any questions I have, there's always someone that is there to answer. So no, I haven't been left to myself. I've been in contact with people since before I left the mission. So yeah.
Good to hear it. Great. Well, I think we're reaching almost the end already. This was such a good conversation. So thank you, Asahu, for all your perspectives. Thank you, everyone, for all of your questions. I wanted to do a quick little briefing or sort of talking to you about the recruitment zone. So it's our newsletter, our database that we use for anyone who's interested in working with MSF. So we'll put the link in the chat. It's a great place if you want to hear more stories from field workers, get some information on working with us, the criteria, the profiles, stay in touch with our team. We manage it directly in our team within MSF Canada, so it's a great place to be. And maybe just to let you know, the next sort of pitch or the next letter that we're going to send is really on how to prepare for working with MSF. What's the recruitment process like? How to prepare to an interview? So that might be useful for people. So feel free to click on that link and join our recruitment zone. And I guess maybe a very, very final question, very quickly for you, Asahi, to wrap us up. Why should people join MSF? Why should they?
If you care about impact, I think, or if you care about having an impact, I think this is a wonderful, wonderful opportunity to do that. I met people that have been in MSF for years, and they've left MSF and they've come back to MSF. That's to tell you how much of an impact it is MSF has on the communities they operate in, and also the impact it has on the people that work for them, and how people want to continue to have that impact, right? So I think that's my biggest motivation. I care about the work that MSF does. It's a wonderful organization. I mean, why not? Why wouldn't anyone support them? And yeah.
Thank you. Perfect. So we'll leave some links as well to our website if you want to have a look. Once again, all the information is there. Maybe this has inspired you a little bit. Maybe you want to go and check it out and potentially apply. And maybe not, or maybe not for now. And there's various other ways you can get involved with MSF as well. So you can see our section on getting involved in general. You can donate. It's a huge part of our work. We're an independent organization funded by donors like you. So that's a great way to get involved as well. And if you have any other further questions, you can put them in the chat. We'll try to respond to as many as possible. And we'll find you on our website for more info. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Asahi, for participating.
Thank you for having me.
And wishing you a great rest of your day or evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.